you don't clean up your tools, the concrete will set on there, and you'll be sorry because you won't be able to get it off later. So we can see what it looks like to lay brick on top of brick. Get in, focused in okay. And first of all, lay down a bed of mortar and scoop up just enough on your trowel there. Drop it on. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, I'm not doing a very good job of this, a bricking trowel. Main reason you want to use a bricking trowel is so you look like a bricker, but you could use a spoon if you wanted to put stuff on here. Doesn't really matter that much. And then you butter the back of the brick. Make sure it's the one that's going to touch this brick. It's called buttering. Put a little on top. This is kind of tricky. It takes some practice, but you make a little pyramid of mortar on top of the end of the brick. And the reason that's there, you have to squish down the sides or else it'll fall off. The mortar just falls right off the brick, which you don't want, obviously. Make sure you put enough so you can squish it into place and then tap it down. Sometimes a rubber mallet's good for that. Tap it even with the string. Nice and even with the string. That's why you have the string. Do not try to do this without a string. You may think it looks straight, and when you're all done you realize it doesn't look straight at all. It looks terrible. So always hang a string before you do brick. Okay? Then all I'm doing with this trowel is scraping, just cutting away the mortar, the extra mortar that comes out like that. Try to save it if you can. If you can't, don't worry about it. Then take this, I like to have a nice clean edge on that, and run it, the joiner, just run it along the joint. It gives you that beveled in look that you're used to. It doesn't have to be too perfect. What will happen then is when this dries, this extra stuff will crack off, so you don't have to worry about that. And then the next brick, we'll again lay a bed of mortar and butter, and next brick, and on you go. Always keeping the back edge even with that string. Okay, one more comment about jointing. As you know, once the joints are made, you run this jointing tool along like so and like so to make the joint circular or kind of rounded. But then one thing I didn't mention because I haven't done it until lately, and you don't have to do it after each joint, you can do it later in the process after you've laid several rows of bricks, is see how this kind of sticks up here. You got a little bit sticking out here, a little bit there. The joining tool kind of pushes off some stuff on the edges. So what you do is you just take a brush, this brush I showed earlier, this is the acid washing brush, but it works fine for this too, is just sweep it. Just sweep over your work kind of lightly, and it knocks off all those edges and gives it a lot better look. A real easy way to move your string, remember we have to move it up a mark each time we do another row of bricks. Just get a clamp and wrap your string around a couple times. Rather than trying to figure out a screw or a nail or whatever, pull it tight to your line of string, to the line where it's supposed to go, wrap it around a couple times, and then clamp it off like so. There we go. Easy. It's kind of hard to get mortar, all the joints exactly the same size. If you look, this joint is kind of tiny. This joint down here is kind of fat, kind of tiny. They're not evenly spaced. And that's partly because, in this particular case, you know, we care exactly where it starts at this end, exactly where it ends down there. Even if you get a little bit off, by the time you get to the other end, it's kind of tight and you have to jam in your joints. So what I've done is laid out all the bricks. The next row I'm going to do, lay out this whole row with no mortar, and then I'm going to take a piece of chalk and chalk lines where the center of each joint is. You can see the first joint is going to be in the middle of there. The second joint is going to be there, 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 and so on. I'm going to do this all the way down the line. And now, when it comes time to mortar, I'll know exactly where the bricks should be. Use half bricks on occasion. You know, when you get to the end of the row and you need a half brick, there's just sometimes you need half bricks. So you just lay right in there and chop. As you can see, the downside to that is you get kind of rough edges. You can knock them off like that, and there you have roughly half a brick. And then the other way is and there you have half a brick. Okay, so you've got the basics of bricking down now, but turns out there's a party coming up at your house and you need to get this thing done quickly, or you want to enter a speed bricking competition, which they do exist. Google it. How do we do it faster? Make sure your mortar is nice and wet. Too thick and it's hard to work with. Just slop it on there. We'll do several bricks at a time. By the way, I prefer this trowel, but I always keep this one handy in case someone comes by, so I let them know that I'm a real bricker. But this is really the trowel I use. Having bricks handy, put my first one in. A little more there. Put my first one in, line it up with the brick 2 rows down. And push it down to the rope. Another advantage of making the mortar really runny is that you can push it down by hand. You don't have to use a mallet, rubber mallet, to push the bricks down. See how I can just by hand just squish them on down right to the right size. Done. It's easier to line them up sideways and then push them down, because once they're down in place, it's just harder to slide them. Here you go. Move in. Run this tool down the sides like so. In case you can't see what I'm doing at all, I understand. But there, we laid 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bricks in maybe, 5 minutes or less.